Today, I want to talk about common mistakes in neurographic works and how to find hidden limitations in our drawings. So, we're going to start with the release. Now, you can see right here, here's an example of the release. I want you to notice that it's partially rounded off. So many newcomers who are just starting to draw neurographics don't have the skill and the habit it takes to see all the intersections. So they round off the release only partially, right? They can miss some fragments and not round them off because their eye is not yet trained to notice them. That's the first thing. The second thing is that when we do the release, it goes in such a quick and intense way that in some parts, the line is less intense in color. Some lines are bolder, some lines are fainter. Then, when we start rounding off the intersections, we get sort of stars like this. They appear very bright compared to the lines that are less intense in color. So, to have a holistic perception, you want to be sure to always go over these lines because we have our mirror neurons working, and it's crucial for our drawings to look coherent and unified. So I want you to be sure and take the time to draw over the lines with a marker. This way, you'll have a solid, holistic impression of the release. And of course, make sure you round off everything properly. Next, I'm going to show you a few examples of how the drawings might display an underlying tension, perhaps like fear, insecurity in the topic. So take a look at the release that I have here. It's rounded off quite thoroughly. Although, if you look closely, you can see some parts that could use some more rounding. However, that's not exactly what I want you to focus on here. What I want you to look at is the release. And even though the release is rounded off, it is still clearly visible. I mean, take a quick glance at this work, and I can see where the release was made. In other words, it was rounded off, but it's not blurred into the space of the sheet. And in this case, I would recommend adding more background mindful lines to dissolve this release to make it unnoticeable. Now, my next point is the field lines. So you can see that they're horizontal and that they're red. But the lines themselves also show the author's uncertainty in the topics that he's working on. So what I'm saying is that there's still some work to be done. See how the lines are at fairly equal distances from each other? What this indicates is mistrust and tension. Notice how they don't overlap anywhere. It's like they don't interact with each other. And despite some attempt to fit them in by rounding them off quite well, they're red. And the red color is not used anywhere else in this drawing. So it seems to me that the field lines are kind of like on their own here, that they're separate from the rest of the drawing. Now, my advice would be to use more red to support the field lines. Use the red color in some other elements of this work. Maybe try going over the main figure with red too. What I want here is a unified impression, and right now I just don't see that. So please pay attention to moments like this. Okay, let's move on to the next example. So I can see here that things are rounded off very well. Everything is connected. But the problem here, there's just not enough figures. So this is an A4 sheet of paper. But the figures look like they're drawn on a smaller sized sheet. It's as if a person sees their topic like this so far. And what does it tell us? That this person doesn't have enough potential accumulated to resolve their situation. They just don't see all the possibilities yet, and that's why there's no figures in these empty spaces. And of course, we see that all the figures are pretty much the same. They're about the same size, too. So I would advise adding some larger figures here, maybe assign some meaning to them, like, I'm not sure what it is, but it certainly is a resource of some kind. Sometimes in such cases, people don't understand and they don't feel the whole range of possibilities and resources that they have. So, there are clearly just not enough figures in this work. And besides, I don't see any figure to be the final decision here. I mean, I see the field lines that are purple, and I see this purple figure here, but as I look at this drawing and at the color scheme, I would say that it covers only an insignificant part of the person's situation. My question, of course, would be, what is the most important thing for you here? And in turn, I would advise drawing more figures and more background mindful lines. Okay, next example. Let's take a look at this drawing. So this is an interesting one. The rounding off is done very well, and I can see a flow here. Notice how the whole picture looks like it's moving, and I think that's really nice. However, let's see what is missing. So I ask myself, what is the main thing about this drawing? And I realize that there are 6 figures here, but none of them is the main one. So, what did the author decide in the end? Where did this drawing lead them? It's so unclear. My other question is, where are the field lines? I don't see them either. So, in this case, I would advise the author to think about the field lines. Try to bring them out. So, my recommendations here are to choose the main figure and to emphasize it in some way and bring the field lines out. Now, there's one more thing. Let's take a look. So, you can see that there are big fragments with no neurolines at all. Here, I would recommend the author to draw mindful lines from these figures. Connect this topic to the society, to the positive experiences of other people. I really want to see more neurolines here. And perhaps when a person adds them, they'll see other figures that might also be needed. See, they'll also find resources and they'll find support figures. So, this drawing here is yet to be refined. It just needs a little more effort. And once that's done, the person will find additional resources and potential. All right, our next example. So, this artwork is admirable on many counts. I really like the colors, the archetyping. Notice that the coloring is done very well here. I see no standalone colored fragments. Look how each color is supported in different parts of the drawing, and there's like a flow feeling too. But what is missing? Once again, it clearly lacks the main figure. I mean, none of these figures look like the centerpiece to me. I can't see the solution that the author found when they drew this picture. And I can't see the field lines either. That is, I don't understand which of these lines are the field lines. You can see many lines in the drawing, and they're spaced out very evenly as well. But what I don't see here are the leading lines, the strong support lines. But I must say that the first steps of the algorithm are very well done. It just only needs the main figure and more prominent field lines. All right, let me show you a few drawings made by Neurographics beginners. I'd like to have you take a look at this figure right here with some identical elements inside. So, what does this tell you? If you ask me, it's repetitive tension within the topic that a person is working on. When I see figures like this, I always ask, what does this figure mean to you? What is it about? It could be an area of life, it could be a person, maybe a resource. And within this circle right here, I see 2 types of tension. This is how it looks to me. See, repeating identical elements within one figure. It's acceptable, but it's preferable for these elements to find some way out. And it would be good if there was some kind of movement. Yet in this drawing, they're enclosed in the figure. I would certainly ask this person, what is this about? Always pay attention to things like that. Okay, so as for this work here, I've been holding on to it for quite some time now, and it illustrates very clearly the way of drawing done by people who have just watched some videos on the internet but aren't that familiar with the technique itself. So, when people are not familiar with the algorithm, they just can't say that they're drawing neurographics. And the picture that you see here is the work of a girl who came to me and told me she was drawing neurographics. She just watched some videos on the internet, and the only thing she learned from those is that you have to round things off. Now, if you look a little closely, you can see some decent rounding. But let's go a little deeper. Apart from the rounding off, there's nothing really neurographical about this picture. I mean, this drawing could function in terms of art therapy, I guess it could. After all, when you work with color, when you find a way to reflect on your situation, it always is going to lead to some kind of a result. But this is not neurographics. So, what can I observe here? Notice these tensions in some areas. And I would ask, what's this about? And this, that, or that one. I'm talking about all this tension. With this approach, even this kind of work can be researched in some way. But still, I see no main figure or background mindful lines here. I'm not even sure that this person knew what those things are. Now, why would I show you a drawing like this? Because even those familiar with the technique sometimes color their drawing in about the same way. Like this beautiful, colorful patchwork rug. I mean, look at all these. So many bright, contrasting colors, so many shades. And yes, it's so colorful and it may be beautiful, yes. But when we take a closer look, we have no movement, no flow whatsoever. And I don't even know what the main thing here is. And I want you to avoid coloring this way. Don't try to use your entire palette, every shade of pencils and markers and fine liners that you have. Of course, when it comes to this kind of drawings, my recommendation is to study the algorithm, study the technique. If you want to draw neurographics, be sure you do it right. That is the only way to get results. Here is another work by the same author, and you can notice that it's the same coloring style here. Still, I want to make a different point with this drawing. Clearly, the person drew herself and important areas of her life. Notice that these figures, the me figure and the areas of life figures, are thoroughly neurographed and rounded off. However, without detailed knowledge of the method, the person couldn't go with neurographics any further. Now, what is my point? If you want to activate important areas of your life, to explore them, to find new opportunities and new solutions or resources, you have to go through these figures with the neurographic line. You have to go inside. I mean, it's not just enough to draw a neural line around the figure. The lines must run through the figures as well. Now, in this example, we can see that only the field lines go through the figures. And besides, I don't see any background mindful lines here. There's none. Anyway, it's obvious that this drawing was made by a beginner, and a beginner who is not familiar with the technique. So please just keep this in mind and try to avoid such mistakes. I hope you'll find this video helpful. Be sure to join my Neurographics course to learn the right techniques and bring amazing transformations into your life. Please find the link below the video.